Over 29 innings scoreless. The Yankees can't get anybody across home plate, and the record is reflecting that. While there may have been a star shipped out of the division, it feels like a moot point if the Yankees can't get any offense of their own. Dylan Price and Justin Chevallella coming at you with our first Bomber Boys of the new era. We've walked across the stage, the tassels have been turned, but Bomber Boys continues on. The new iteration of Bomber Boys for this summer. A little bit of a flashback to last summer before we upgrade things a little bit. But Justin, before we get into the Yankees' very, very palpable slump, how are you?
Yeah, doing good. Kind of settling into the rhythm of being back home, especially considering, came home and then went straight to Myrtle Beach with you and our friend Dom, and then eventually got home, settled into the rhythm, leaving again this weekend. But certainly doing well. Dylan, how are you?
Doing well. Been a lot of traveling on both of our ends. Yours coming up this weekend. Got to go to the 125th U.S. Open last weekend. It was hot, it was humid, and
What
pretty
an
much all the
event, by the
stars.
way. What a finish.
Incredible finish. All the stars struggling. One guy finishing even just under par, not nonetheless even par. It was a course that definitely took everybody's lunch money and ran with it. But speaking of taking lunch money and running with it, right now Aaron Boone seems like he's embezzling money from the Steinbrenners with how he has been managing things. It has been a little bit of rough sailing for the guy who will coach the American League side of the All-Star game in just a few weeks, but as things currently stand, the Yankees still atop the American League East, but coming off a rough, rough stretch.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an incredibly rough stretch, 29 and a third scoreless innings in a row for the Yankees. I believe it's a 5-game losing streak now after being swept by the Red Sox first two against the Angels. It's the Angels that we're talking about here. We're not talking about a team that's really in, playoff contention. The Angels got off to a hot start and cooled down rather quickly. Boston's a different story. Boston's a team that was hot going into the series, a team that's kind of there in the wild card mix, and a team that obviously has their own problems to figure out, but they were hot going into the series, and the Yankees at the same time, haven't been playing their best baseball. So it was almost a recipe for success for Boston over the weekend. But to me, what screams the bigger problem is what's going on here against the Angels. Most notably, the offense just has been shut down. And, there's been a struggle from Aaron Judge for the first time this season. It was bound to come. We all expected it. It happens every year. It happens with every player. But, it's three for his last 19, but it was since an off day that he didn't need. And that is the problem that I think a lot of Yankee fans are turning to right now is that Aaron Boone decided to give Aaron Judge a day off. I believe it was the final game before Boston, and I'm blanking on the opponent right now, but it was against Kansas City, if I'm not mistaken, that final game. The Yankees won 1-0. It was not needed. I mean, you can DH him at that time. Stanton wasn't back yet. There's still that, lineup mix that you could put him at DH and have your outfield still be really strong. Now you've got the issue of you've got too many guys to DH and Ben Rice and Giancarlo Stanton to the point Aaron Judge really can't buy a day at DH. But this was not a point that you needed Aaron Judge to, get a day off. And it's really killed his rhythm. It's killed his momentum. And in turn, it's killed the Yankees' momentum. And that's where you look at it. You mentioned Aaron Boone kind of stealing some lunch money. This is my analogy that I hinted to before we came to record here. The Knicks just fired Tom Thibodeau after making the Eastern Conference Final for the first time since 2000 because they don't think that Tom Thibodeau would be the coach to get them over the hump, to get them past the Pacers, to get them into the final, and to get them a championship. Well, this is now another year that we've seen Aaron Boone kind of mismanage the Yankees. And we're not to the postseason yet, but you look back to last postseason. You look back to when he put Nestor Cortez in for the first time in over a month, and it led to the Grand Slam and, the end of game one, and the Yankees could never rebound. That's the analogy I want to make here is Aaron Boone the manager that's going to get the Yankees over the hump? I really don't think he is. And you look, and we were talking about the Knicks on our road trip a lot. You look at one of the comparisons is the Yankees fired Buck Showalter, and the year later, Joe Torre came in and led the Yankees to a World Series. But when you have constant mismanagement, Judge didn't need a day off. The lineup has been all over the place. You play Pablo Reyes more days than you probably should have, which you can't fully blame on, Aaron Boone. There's been some injuries and obviously roster construction, but you really wonder, is Aaron Boone that guy to get the Yankees over the hump? And, the more he's got his sample size larger, the more it seems like the answer is no.
It's been definitely a tough run for him here. James Rousing, the hitting coach, he was named to the position a couple years ago. You and I talked about it ad nauseum. Clearly, things not working right now at the Dish. To kind of go to a different lane with your point here before I touch on it a little bit further. Aaron Judge, you mentioned 3 for his last 19. Over the last 7 games, batting 125 with a 222 on base percentage. Trent Grisham has come back down to life over his last 15 games, batting 224. Ben Rice batting 180 over his last 50 at bats. Cody Bellinger, despite having a 2-out double last night, thought maybe some offense would spark there. He's batting 138 through his last 29 at bats. I can keep going down the list here, but to punctuate the point even further, a guy like Paul Goldschmidt, who at one point had the second best average on the team, still does, but 238 over his last 21 at bats, 170 over his last 53. This isn't just a slump from one guy. This is a collective slump from the entire lineup. And it's coming at a terrible time where the pitching staff has continued to do their thing. The starters have been pretty strong. Last night, Will Warren allowed 3 earned runs, which is going to be tough to come back from regardless, but had good stuff. 11 strikeouts, a career high for him. So clearly the slump is happening, but as you mentioned, it kind of dates back to that Kansas City game where it was a bit of a weird situation where you give him an off day when you're about to have reinforcements. Yes, Stanton is only going to be playing as the designated hitter, but you're going to have the flexibility to still move guys around the outfield and give that day off to Judge. And reportedly, they're training Oswald Peraza to learn the outfield as well to make him a Swiss Army knife to be able to give more days off coming into the heat of the summer. But with Judge there, it felt like you're just punting. You're punting that lineup out there, and we've talked about the Aaron Boone punt lineups in the past, but it feels like even just these past couple of days, up to last night, you're not stacking a lineup right now. You're just kind of throwing guys out there willy-nilly. You're giving guys off days to try to get somebody of this entire lineup back on track, and nothing's sticking right now. And it just feels like that's been the Aaron Boone method during slumps for all this time. It doesn't matter if it's James Rousing, who's the hitting coach, going back even further, it's still been an Aaron Boone staple where you just throw, for lack of a better word, shit at the wall and see what sticks. We can say that word now because we're no longer on radio. I'm going to take advantage of it, but that's been the Aaron Boone kind of situation and his approach to these kind of slumps that are inevitable. But when it happens to 9 guys in the lineup at the same time, that's not ideal. And it's something that there should be ways to find solutions to. Last night you mentioned it before we came on air. There's a players only meeting. Is it, Aaron Judge saying, hey, we need to get our heads out of our whats? Or is it something simply as, hey, we need to play for our guy right now because look across town. Look across town to the MSG, where a guy who did enough to get them to the postseason, as Boone has done, to make a deep run, as the Yankees did a year ago. But just like that, you can see a guy who these guys do seem to publicly love, see him just as the Knicks publicly said about Thibodeau, see him pushed out. So we saw that happen with Joe Girardi a couple years ago when Aaron Boone eventually was hired. Feels like that was decades ago now with how long Aaron Boone has been the manager of the New York.
And remember, Joe Girardi had just taken the Yankees to Game 7 of the ALCS that they were not expected to even touch the postseason that year. Nonetheless, get to the final game before the World Series. But the same thought matter now. There was discussion that Brian Cashman and Joe Girardi didn't see eye to eye on things. It's the same thought matter. Joe Girardi isn't getting the Yankees over the hump anymore. And they let him go. And they let him go off to Philadelphia before he ended up back in the Yes Network booth. And I got to say, real quick, before I let you get on your point, he's done a phenomenal job. And I thought Todd Frazier the last couple of days has been great on color. But back to your point.
No, just you kind of punctuated it right there. There's precedent for it. And there's definitely been that kind of vibe, I think, around this team this year where it feels like they have the tools to be a really good ball club. And I think so far, even through, these 42 and 30 record, this first 72 games of the season, they're superseding your expectations, given where we had our initial record predictions in
Yep.
the early part of the spring. And for the most part, they're superseding mine as well. We've seen guys like Grisham, Rice, Goldschmidt really pilot this lineup through some tough stretches. And of course, Judge being a world beater. But just as the New York Knicks got to the cusp of making it to the NBA Finals and fell short, it feels like this is a kind of do or die year for Aaron Boone when you start with an April and May as strong as they did.
Well, you got to also remember they're exceeding our expectations right now, but they were 50 and 22 last year and fell to 56 and 39. They went 6 and 17 over a stretch of 23 games, and you and I in this same format over the summer last year, you in Charlottesville, me up in Sanford, we're talking about the same thing. And the Yankees didn't make any changes, notable changes in terms of their coaching staff. And that's fine. You don't have to when you go to the World Series, but it's obviously a point that's got to be brought up because this is year in and year out, and you haven't won that World Series. And you mismanaged it too if you're Boone. But I want to take it somewhere else away from Aaron Boone and just kind of take it to the roster construction as a whole. And, when Juan Soto originally, left the Yankees, I told you, hey, calm down. We got in that heated exchange on Com Radio. You walked out of the studio that day, and I was like, Plan 1B, as I termed it, for most people would probably just be Plan B, but for me, 1B was to go out and get Paul Goldschmidt, to go get Cody Bellinger, Max Fried. And you know what? These guys are performing, especially Max Fried. Cody Bellinger, after a slow start, really got going. He's kind of plateaued a little bit as of late. And Goldschmidt, I mean, he's still batting 304, another guy that you can say has come back down to earth a little bit. I mean, there's two Yankees batting over 300, and it's Aaron Judge and Paul Goldschmidt. And one of those names you would have kind of expected. You probably would have really expected 290 from Judge. And then for Paul Goldschmidt, I think I predicted about 250. So he's exceeding it from 54. The Yankees are missing something, and I hate to say it. The answer or the person that they're missing is Juan Soto. Because at this point last year, through all the struggles that we pointed to, I think Judge was probably Judge was just hitting his stride right about now at this point last year. But in April, when Judge was struggling, who was carrying the Yankees? It was Juan Soto. Right now, the Yankees don't have that guy to pick up the slack. And Giancarlo Stanton could be that guy. We've seen him collect 4 hits over his first 2 games off the IL. Not a home run yet, but you figure it's coming. But at the same time, is Stanton even going to play every day? Because they're right now figuring out how to still get Ben Rice in the lineup while also getting Giancarlo in. And remember, at this point, Giancarlo is a one-dimensional player. He can only be a DH. He cannot play in the field, and they're not going to test him in the field with how injured he's been. And it really hurts how the Yankees can construct their lineup. But you look at the guys that were helping fill the void early, besides just Bellinger and Goldschmidt, who the Yankees acquired. You're talking about Trent Grisham, who has really regressed back down to a 243 average, 13 home runs, 28 runs batted in. Ben Rice continues to be one of the unluckiest hitters. His expected batting average is a lot higher than his 229 average. Austin Wells, 11 home runs, but he's in a slump down to 217 with his batting average, 279 on base percentage. You're not getting production there. Jazz has been a little bit better since coming off the IL as compared to when he first went on the IL. And Jason Dominguez has been, a little disappointing. Obviously, DJ LeMahieu got off to that hot start off the IL, but he hasn't been doing anything. Oswald Peraza hasn't done anything. Obviously, JC Escara backing up catcher. I purposely skipped over Anthony Volpe because I think there's a bigger dialogue to have there. But the point is, the Yankees don't have that guy to get them over the hump right now. If Judge is struggling, who can really carry the team? The answer is nobody. Even if Giancarlo Stanton was providing, what's he providing? A run or two right now? They've been shut out for 3 straight games for 29 and a third straight. Even if Stanton were able to hit a home run or two, Yankees are still losing these games. Last year in the postseason, why Stanton was so great, Soto was there too, and they were able to go back and forth with each other and provide a lot. Yankees don't even have that extra guy right now. They're just kind of stuck, and obviously trade deadline is, approaching, so you got to expect the Yankees to be active.
I implore you, if you haven't already, if you follow Frank the Tank on social media, please go check out his profanity-laden rant. I was going to play it on here, but the quality of it's not great. Where he pretty much says the effing season's over for the New York Mets as well. I was listening to WFAN this morning. They're not really giving, despite the fact Juan Soto kept them in their game last night, giving him the same shine as
Well, he
well.
also lost it for them with his base running blunder.
Well, his bat got them there, and even within striking distance in the first place. Everybody's hurt. Soto feels like it's still been a tough fit in Queens, and the Yankees could use him right now. But at the same stretch of things, you talked about that Plan 1B, and before we talk about maybe some potential reinforcements coming via the trade deadline, and of course, off the IL in short order, let's talk about this pitching staff that has been, for the most part, relatively solid, despite the fact that they have not gotten any run support. Max Fried continues to star. Talked before about Will Warren and what he was able to do last night. Career high 11 strikeouts for Warren. Carlos Rodon got roughed up a little bit against Boston in his last two outings, but prior to that, felt like he was really coming into his own. As you look at this pitching staff that is without Luke Weaver right now, who they should hopefully be getting back in the next couple weeks, and talk about his update, he was able to toss a simulated game yesterday. They're going to decide next steps hopefully tomorrow. He could be activated straight up without a rehab assignment, according to Boone. Jake Cousins, big hit. He's going to be out for the season with a UCL injury. The club announced a couple days ago that he's going to require Tommy John surgery. And hopefully within the next 2 weeks, Luis Gil should be facing live hitters. There is the Marcus Stroman situation of it all. He's been pitching in rehab outings. Could we see Marcus Stroman? That's a whole nother conversation that you and I have had ad nauseum. But looking at what you have right now for the Yankees pitching staff, for the most part, things have looked relatively strong.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with Max Fried, who wasn't supposed to be the ace of this team. You were supposed to have Garrett Cole there. Again, you and I talked while we were still on the radio about maybe the fact that the Yankees knew Max Fried would have to be their ace because, Garrett Cole has dealt with the elbow last year and probably dealt with it all off season. But right now, what it is a bunch of guys exceeding expectations. Max Fried, even, I think you and I probably predicted a 250 ERA for Fried. He's at a 189 ERA. He's 9-2 with a .95 whip. Obviously, Carlos Rodon, like you said, last couple of starts haven't been great, but it was a team that he saw back to back. Yeah, they're probably going to get to you. They've seen your stuff twice in a week, unlike the Yankees were able to do with Hunter Dobbins after his comments trying to reignite, the Yankee Red Sox rivalry. But Will Warren, I'll put my hand up. I was ready to write the guy off. I think we had that conversation back in probably late April of me going, how long can you deal with 4 1/3 every time? And since then, I'm not going to take credit for it, but since then he's been a lot better, including last night, and he deserved a win last night. But he didn't get it because of the for a rookie season, 4.83 ERA, 133 WHIP. He's exceeding expectations. Clarke Schmidt, after a few rough outings off the IL, he's settled into a rhythm, but he's still exceeding where you normally see Clarke Schmidt. You normally see that ERA just over 4. It's down at a 3.16. And obviously there's Ryan Yarbrough, 7 games started, wasn't supposed to be a starter, and he's exceeding expectation. The question is, when do these guys that are exceeding expectations come back down to earth? Do they come back down to earth is the first question. But when it becomes an when instead of the if, how are the Yankees going to handle that, right? When Ryan Yarbrough comes back down to being the guy that maybe he was with the Rays in Miami, when, Clarke Schmidt bounces back up his ERA a little bit, when Will Warren goes back into a rookie year struggle, that's where the Yankees are going to run into problems. Right now, their pitching staff is the reason they're staying in these games because we've talked about it. The offense struggling right now, and it's not just right now. They've had their struggles throughout the year. But for me, it's got to be those reinforcements have to come on strong. Luis Gil is going to be fun when he gets back, probably still out another month or two, and that's a perfect time. And we're going to sit here probably in a month or whenever Luis Gil is coming off the IL, and we're going to go, And here we go again. Brian Cashman saying that Luis Gil is the same as a trade deadline acquisition. Well, this is one that I welcome because he is a trade deadline. It'll be around the trade deadline, and he's going to be good, and he's going to slot right in, and he's going to take some of the pressure off. We've seen a lot of management lately with rookie pitchers in terms of getting their innings up there. So you'll probably have Will Warren at some point shelved for a couple weeks, maybe even for the rest of the season. You think back to when Steven Strasburg had his 200 inning limit as a rookie with Washington. But you're excited about what those guys are going to bring. And obviously, you're just excited in general about what this pitching staff is going to be. If the Yankees are going to make a run to the World Series, if the Yankees are going to win the World Series, it'll be on the backs of this pitching staff. And that is fun because I think the last couple of years, we've been talking about Aaron Judge. We've been talking about, last year Juan Soto, obviously what Stanton was able to do in the postseason. But to have a great pitching staff that's only going to get better when Gil comes back, when Weaver comes back, it's gonna be fun times for the Yankees as long as that offense starts to click.
Still over a month and a half until the Major League Baseball trade deadline on July 31st. As you mentioned, Luis Gil, it's one of you and I's biggest pet peeves when Brian Cashman will take the podium and say, hey, it's right in front of us, as Aaron Boone has always said. And
got to slap the table while you do it.
We've got guys coming back that are basically trade deadline acquisitions. So first off, Brian, as we said every year, that's not how it works. It means that they were shelved to start the season, not that they just came back magically because you decided to sideline them. Maybe they did. Let's not go in speculation here. They would love to have Luis Gil right now if they could. Gil will be back though, and that's going to be a massive acquisition, or to get back even half of what he was a year ago. He was the American League Rookie of the Year. Gil coming back, King of the Heel, is going to be a welcome sight. So that's part of it. And then on the other side of things, you talk about, getting Luke Weaver back after a couple weeks off. That's going to be a welcome sight. Getting Giancarlo Stanton back for an extended run and really seeing what you're going to have there this season is going to be a welcome sight. We're at the point right now that we were last summer where we came on this podcast and said it's time to kind of diagnose the needs, diagnose where we go from here if you're the New York Yankees. And right now, with a month and a half till the deadline, you're still in that period. Yes, this is the biggest slump the Yankees have had this season. But if it continues on and, a couple reinforcements don't look like they're going to be the answer, then yes, you go out at the deadline. And for a team that doesn't feel like it's far off and an American League that does for the second straight year look winnable, yes, you go out and add, another arm to the pen and you go out and add maybe another bat. Obviously, Eugenio Suarez has been floated in big conversations right now, and that would be a big acquisition. But when you look at this roster right now, as much as you and I have really drilled a hole through the roster construction of it, right now it's kind of where you sit on your hands. This is not the time where you are going out and shelling out prospects left and right. Right now is where you do genuinely agree with Brian Cashman and say, hey, we're going to get some guys back. Let's sit for now. And if it comes in, 2 weeks, this slump continues, then that's when you and I go through a laundry list of names that could be traded out and traded in come July 31st. But just before we start to wind things down here, a couple names that you've thought about, or is there anybody who, maybe an area that you think is going to be almost a desperate need?
Yeah, I've seen a lot floated on Twitter, and Yankee fans are very active. Sorry, X, I guess, not Twitter anymore. They're very active, so they always like to write stuff. And I've seen they need to go get an elite starter. I disagree. You've already got 5 really good starters, and Luis Gil's going to come back. I've seen the bullpen arm. I always agree. The more help you can get in your bullpen, the better. The same kind of thing with the starters. There's guys overperforming their expectations in the bullpen. Obviously, there's guys underperforming as well. Not as much lately, but right now, I believe Scott Effross is still up with the Yankees. That's a guy that you could see. He was a trade deadline acquisition 2 years ago who really didn't, or I think 3 years ago, 2022 now, who really didn't pan out. You could see him on the move in exchange for an elite pitcher. Obviously, there'll be more there. But you got to find an infielder, in my opinion, another infielder that is. And I'm not talking to go out and get a guy that's locked up into a long contract. The Yankees won't do that because of, the expectations they're already putting on to George Lombard Jr. And that'll be probably a dialogue next week or the week after about how Volpe and George Lombard are kind of in the same boat. Rock Reggio playing kind of well down there too right now. So they've got options down the road, but you need someone for the next, the rest of this season and maybe next year before you can even talk about one of those guys, specifically Lombard, coming up and, performing in the major leagues. And I think they've learned their lesson from Volpe that maybe an extra year probably wouldn't be the worst down in the minors. So for me, I mean, you've got Suarez, who you just mentioned, 33 years old. I believe it's just 1 year left on his contract. I could be wrong there. It might be an extra year next year too. But you also look at what Suarez has done. Sure, he's got 21 homers and 58 runs batted in, but outside of that, I mean, a 234 batting average, and I know people don't like batting average. I still like batting average. At the end of the day, it still tells you how effective you are when you've got a bat in your hand. And I don't need to go and get the expected blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'll mention it from time to time, but if I don't know how to calculate a stat, then I don't think it's a stat that I'm going to discuss. So batting average, it's simple to calculate, and I think it still proves your worth as a hitter, and a 312 on base percentage for Suarez. I mean, that's not moving the needle per se. It might get you a cheap rental in Suarez there because of what he's put together. I'll say I haven't really dug too far into other guys at this point because I think it's still a bit early, but I can tell you, you need to get an infielder because unfortunately, I loved what DJ did coming off the IL, but he's went back down. I've always been an Oswald Peraza fan because I think the Yankees mismanaged him, putting him up and down on the Scranton shuttle. And obviously Oswaldo injured doesn't help the case, but you need to find someone else. You've got Jazz playing third right now, and it hasn't been the smoothest, I'd say, over there for him this year as compared to last year. And I just think that if you can get somebody else in the infield, obviously the reason they have Jazz at third base is because they think it's going to be easier to find a second baseman. I don't think it matters who you find. Just find someone that's going to provide for your offense. And I think obviously the big ticket item right now that everyone is talking about for the Yankees would be Suarez.
It's still early, obviously, in the process, as you mentioned, into who could be coming available as teams hit really the main kind of diagnosis period, the same kind of situation the Yankees are in right now. You really figure out if you're a buyer or a seller. The Yankees will be buyers, but they're waiting to figure out if they need to buy, how much they'll need to buy, and what teams are going to be sellers and who could be on the market. Fan favorite of Bomber Boys, Ryan McMahon, another guy who's been mentioned again, but his
Yep.
batting average 222. And hey, the Rockies, they're heating up right now. Quick look around the state heading into tonight before we send it off. Yankees 42 and 32 and a half game lead over the Tampa Bay Rays, who might be getting sold in due time. 40 and 33 for them, 39 and 33 for the Blue Jays, 38 and 37 for the Red Sox, and 31 and 41 for the O's. 2.5 games back are the Rays, 3 are the Blue Jays, 5.5 are the Red Sox, and 11 are the O's. Tigers lead the
You
AL.
gotta right the ship there.
Would you
Sorry
say?
to cut you off. You gotta right the ship because they have really dropped to the point Tampa could lead the AL East by the end of the weekend, or Toronto. Those numbers used to be a couple weeks ago. We're talking big numbers there. Now they're down to just minuscule.
Yankees still hold the second best record in the American League by just a game over the Astros right now. Tigers hold the best record in the American League, 47 and 27. They lead the Central. Stros lead the American League West with 42 and 31 their record. As the wild card race would stand, the Rays and Blue Jays would be atop of it. Also figure into the conversation what could happen with the Mariners, Guardians, and of course the Red Sox, who are now without Rafael Devers. In the National League, well, I'll save the breath. The West continues to dominate. Dodgers, Giants, Padres, all looking really good. Armstrong pilots the Cubs. They're 45 and 28, tied with the Mets for the best record in the National League. They are also 45 and 28. Phillies starting to get hot as well. They're 43 and 30. Any final thoughts before we sign off on this Wednesday afternoon tonight? Amazon Prime, the capper of this Los Angeles Angels series.
Yeah, you got to win tonight. You just like Hendricks shut down your team all night last night. He had the second worst ERA of qualified starting pitchers this year in the MLB. Well, you're facing the lowest or the worst ERA of a qualified starter tonight. You got to get to the starter early. You've got to provide some run support for your starter as well tonight. Because it's now 6 games the Yankees have not provided run support. Starting pitcher, just get something going early. You don't need to win 25-4, but get some runs on the board and start the turnaround after this little bit of a rough stretch.
Yankees look to snap their 5-game skid tonight against the Angels, and then tomorrow, I'll put my foot in my mouth. They round things out with the Angels before hosting the O's this weekend, and then heading on the road to Cincinnati before the next time you and I get together. We don't have really a big preview of what's going on this weekend, but we can tell you that next week we'll be back, same time, same place, wherever you are, wherever you may be. Thank you for hanging with Justin Chevallella and myself here on Bomber Boys.